exclusively on Secular Media Network. This is the Gaytheist Manifesto.
Hello and welcome to the Atheist Manifesto, your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement. I am your host, Callie Wright, joined by my co-host, Ari Spellman. What's up, Ari?
Hi, Callie.
Oh my god, are you sad again?
I am sad. I am very lonely.
What? Oh.
Because my partner, Zach, has been back in Arkansas for the last week, and I've been here all alone, just with my evil cat.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and he was supposed to come back tomorrow, but then yesterday he took a rock to the windshield, so he has to get it fixed on Monday.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
He said the lesson that he learned is don't drive behind 80-year-old women on the freeway.
That's a valuable lesson, one that I'm surprised it took him this long to learn. So, in case you haven't heard, friends, there is an election impending. Right? News, right?
Yeah.
That's a thing that's happening. So the RNC just concluded in Cleveland, and it was the absolute shit show that I think everyone expected it to be. I don't think anyone...
It was everything I was hoping for and more.
I don't think anyone was very surprised by that mess. The DNC begins soon. And I think we can probably all agree that the DNC, at least as an organization and as a party, is kind of a shit show as well at this point.
In other ways, but yes.
It's been fairly clear all along that the DNC very heavily favored Hillary Clinton, and it's now come out in emails that they were sort of actively working to try and sabotage Bernie Sanders. One, by outing him as a supposed atheist, which he is not, but they were going to try and use that against him, which obviously pisses me off, being an atheist and a progressive voter. So not super happy about all of that. But I'm also abjectly terrified of the prospect of Donald Trump becoming president. So
No, you should be okay with that because he is for the queers. Just ask the gays. The gays love him.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
He even used the Q in the acronym in his speech.
He really did.
He's going to protect us by bombing ISIS.
That was literally the one thing during the RNC that impressed me. Oh wow, they included the Q in the acronym. Wow, like
he even knows what that means.
That's how low the bar has been set, friends. So, the question is, as liberal progressive folks, do we continue to support the Democratic nominee for president? Or do we throw our vote behind third-party candidates? Because, frankly, the Democratic Party does not seem to care very much about us or the things that we care about. But our system is very set up, geared towards a two-party system. And there is an argument to be made that voting for a third-party candidate strengthens the conservative candidate. There are some people who are convinced by that argument. I am one of those people, kind of on that side a little bit. Ari, whereabouts do you stand on that?
Yeah, I think I'm more towards just, hashtag settling for Hillary at this point. Just because, the idea of a Trump presidency is just so terrifying to me that I don't want to take any risks whatsoever at this point.
Putting the meh in America, I think is...
Exactly.
Yeah. And so we have two guests on tonight who are not of that view. Dan Arrell, author, blogger, activist, scourge of Ken Ham. Dan, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And Jabari, welcome to the show. Jabari is a dedicated Green Partier, Jill Stein voter. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Hello. Good to be here.
So let's go to it, right? Because I think all four of the people here can very solidly agree that the Democratic Party is a complete and utter shit show at the moment. So, Dan, let's start with you. Where are you at on this whole thing?
I'm in a new place right this moment than I think I've been in a week.
Ooh. Give us
Because
the scoop.
today just all culminated to be this giant, absolute disaster. Where, last Friday we had Tim Kaine announced as the VP, and that was like a big, giant disappointment for the left. He's a very centrist or center-right candidate, even more so than I've ever accused Hillary of being, where, he really could be considered a moderate Republican with so many of his stances, but falls on some of the more socially liberal side of things. And that was very disappointing to see that she didn't pick a candidate that would appeal to, the quote-unquote Bernie side of supporters. She decided to appeal to the never Trump Republicans. That's what Tim Kaine gained for her. And then, so I kind of spoke out against that a bit and was pretty disappointed. But at that point, still hadn't quite said, look, swing states, you need to make up your mind to what you think is right. Are you going to vote third party? Are you going to vote Clinton? That's a conscious decision that you need to make. You need to be conscientious of the outcome of that. But at the same time, I wasn't going to sway somebody either way. And then today, everything just went to hell with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Sorry, I'm going to mess up her name every single time.
Name. Jeez.
It's so hard. Announcing her resignation, which was fantastic. That's what we needed. She needed to resign because, like you had mentioned earlier, the scandal of working actively against Sanders, which is against the DNC rules. But also just the way they did it. They didn't just say, let's put our weight behind Clinton. They said, let's find things to ruin him. Oh, one of those could be saying he's an atheist, without thinking that they have the majority of atheist voters. So, number one, she just, the DNC just looked at me and said, yeah, we don't care about you. You're a pawn in our game. And then, so she announces she's leaving. It seems like this great idea, she's out. Maybe we can put some new people in. This corruption can come to an end. And then the Clinton campaign picks her up immediately and makes her an honorary chair.
What a shocker there.
Is the Clinton campaign giving a giant middle finger to Bernie supporters, and the left. Because I guess I should make a big distinction here. I'm going to use the word left and liberal, and they are two separate things.
Right, that's fair.
And I've written about this many times. There's the left, which is the far. When I say left, I mean far left. The Greens, the socialists, the communists, that side of things. Then there's the liberals, who I kind of think of more as the Democrats, who are pro-capitalism and more to the effect of supporting Democrats than looking at thirds. But Clinton today told me she doesn't want my vote.
Fair enough. And Jabari, let's talk for a second about where you're at.
Yeah, it was, obviously kind of ridiculous seeing all these emails come out. For me personally, the level of shock value kind of low. I've been done with the Democratic Party for a while. I've supported Bernie pretty hard in this primary, but I've been thinking about Jill Stein since February, and then since his first big Super Tuesday loss in March, I was putting her on the back burner, and as things started to seem less and less likely for Bernie, I was more and more Jill. And in terms of the corruption of the DNC, we all knew it was there. We knew it was there when we saw the debate schedule. We knew it was there when that issue happened with the cutting off of his access to the voter rolls. We knew it was there just throughout. I've been calling out corruption and shenanigans since Hillary got 6 coin tosses in Iowa. When it comes to the events of this weekend, it's, for me, just one more. The straw that broke the camel's back happened a while ago. I do think it's going to inflame a lot of people. I'm planning to be in Philly tomorrow near the DNC. I am encouraging people to leave the party. I think this is something that needs to happen. Either it needs to die or it needs outward pressure from movement, from strength growing in another party like the Green Party. And I'm actually really kind of excited to see how this continues to develop, because I think the WikiLeaks releases, I mean, this is just the first day or the second day now of, I think they're planning 6 days. Maybe might need to fact check me on that, but we will see how things continue to develop.
I know when the first one came out, they were like, this is, version 1. So like they definitely said like, yeah, this is a thing we're going to do a whole bunch more of.
Right on. So, I mean, we will see how things continue to develop. I know a lot of burners are planning to, do the Dem exit on July 29th, like after the final day of the convention. So, I mean, this is going to be a constantly evolving process, and we will see how it impacts the Democrats, and we will see how it impacts the Green Party, and I guess also Libertarians, because that's happening too.
Fair enough. So, again, I think we probably find a lot of agreements when we're talking about specific policy positions and things that we want to see. I think the four of us probably agree on more than we disagree on. I would guess.
Yeah.
We don't all know each other super, super well, but I would bet on specific policy positions, we probably would agree more than disagree. Here, let me just make the case for why, at least at this point, I am a reluctant Hillary voter. And I would love to hear both of you respond to this. So I am not a fan of the Democratic Party, and I haven't been. But in the way that our system is set up currently, and I agree the system needs to change, but it's the way the system is, when a progressive-leaning or left-leaning person votes for a third party, it does sort of tacitly support the conservative side. And what I'm curious about is how we do this without 4 years of Donald Trump. Because I'm not a fan of Hillary. There are tons and tons of problems. Like I am not a person who is going to make apologies for Hillary Clinton or defend Hillary Clinton, but in my eyes, Hillary Clinton is status quo or maybe a little bit worse. And that's not a thing to be excited about. Status quo is bad. But Donald Trump is a million steps backwards. And there, so often you hear, well, give me a better reason than she's not Donald Trump. And in my mind, the fact that she's not Donald Trump is an argument. Because for me, I mean, speaking specifically for me as a queer person, as a transgender person, and as a lower middle class person, when I say that Donald Trump scares me, I'm not being hyperbolic. Like, I stay up at night worrying really, really hard about a Donald Trump presidency. And I don't know how we get to change these things and remove our support from the Democratic Party without causing that to happen. So, Jabari, you wanna take that?
Yeah. Well, two things in there. I mean, the one thing is of being more scared of Trump than Hillary. It's like a separate thing which we can talk about later in the conversation. But I will address first what the question you asked of how do we achieve this without leading to a Donald Trump presidency, and I think that's a totally fine goal to have. One way you can think of this election too is like maybe the vote for the Green Party is not necessarily to get Jill Stein elected. If you get a third party to 5% of the popular vote, that triggers all sorts of perks and goodies, such as getting them matching, federal funding, which can amount to like over $100 million in the 2020 election. It also guarantees their party full ballot access in all 50 states, which is great for the Green Party because they spend most of their time having to re-get on the ballot every single election. And in some states, the requirements are as high as tens of thousands of signatures, which is a lot for a party that refuses to take any corporate money and is consistently broke. And if you look at the numbers, just getting this 5%, this magic number that allows you all these goodies of millions of dollars in federal funding and free ballot access, it amounts to around 6.5 million people. Around 130 million people vote in every presidential election. Now, if you look at the margins of different states around, I mean, we all know there's swing states, there's really safe blue states, really safe red states, and you can actually just target the really safe states on either side. I happen to live in New York, which votes like blue by an extra 1.5 to 2 million votes every presidential election. California, 2 to 3 million extra blue votes. And then there's tons of other smaller, heavily blue states. You can also pull from red states that are never going blue.
Texas has 3 million people vote Democrat every single election, and that state's never going blue. There's 4 to 5 million Republican votes, so that's just 3 million kind of wasted, you could call them protest votes in Texas, because it's never going blue. And even just looking at New York, California, and Texas alone, that's more than enough to put us over the threshold of 6.5 million people to get that 5% and all those goodies. And if you spread out the wealth, you can actually do very safe margins in multiple safe states and get the Green Party the access it needs. And this is actually called the Smart State Strategy, and it was employed in 2004 by the David Cobb, the Green Party candidate. Didn't work out so well because everyone was still pissed about Nader, but it's definitely a viable strategy, and you can do it with a clean conscience.
Okay, fair. So let me repeat that back. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it right. So the idea is that we take the safe blue states,
yep,
and peel some of those folks off, mm-hmm, and use those folks to get to the 5%. So yep, we're not saying let's actually put the election of a Democratic candidate in jeopardy. What we're saying is, for this round, we're going to get 5% of the popular vote by peeling away some of the states that really, no matter what we do, they're either going to be blue or they're going to be red. So you get to that 5%, and that puts you in the position to be viable for 2020. So, yes, so the idea is basically what we're doing is we're not doing anything to put in jeopardy the idea of, Donald Trump becoming president, but we're positioning in 2020 like, okay, now we're a viable party and we might actually be able to get elected because you have all of those things. Is that kind of where we're at?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. That's actually pretty convincing to me. That's not something I heard. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Well, and then again, if people are super, I totally understand if people are batshit scared of Trump. There's tons of polling polls. 538's doing amazing jobs of day-to-day polling, and if you really want to just check the polls, you can see what the margins are in your state up until October.
Right on, Dan. Your thoughts?
They really match Jabari, but I think we can go a little bit further, because if you really look at the numbers of Democrats in this country, they greatly outnumber Republicans. If you weren't even to count independents at first and everybody just voted straight ticket, Democrats win. Now, of course, we have Electoral College, we have different factors that come in here. So then you bring in independents, and 64% of independents lean Democrat when they vote, which again puts the Democrats way above margin. So you first have the idea that, honestly, if the Democrats put forth a candidate that the country is excited about, that they want, like they did with Obama, you have this
like
idea.
Like they might have done with Bernie?
Like they really might have had a better chance of doing with Bernie, is you get that third party suddenly doesn't become a threat. No one complained about Jill Stein in 2012. No one. She ran just as hard as a campaign, just as vocal, and no one complained. Because the idea behind Obama was so big, and he had already come off a pretty decent first 4 years as far as Democrats were concerned, that she wasn't a threat. What they're looking at now is that she is a viable threat because of Bernie. Because Bernie was such a threat to her, and she's so closely aligned with Bernie that they now are panicking because they feel like they're going to lose all these votes. When really what they should be focused on is making Clinton appeal to these Democrats that just want to leave. Because if the Greens all just voted green, or independents all just voted green, the Democrats could still win if they turned out and voted. But the truth is, 50% of them are going to stay home. So I think to build on Jabari's kind of idea here, which I think is perfect, the smart state strategy is ideal. And I wrote about this in detail for Counterpunch, is we need to be talking to moderate Republicans, our fiscally conservative friends that are generally more socially liberal, but still tend to vote Republican, and they need to either abstain or vote Gary Johnson if they're not going to go Green Party, which they likely won't if they're conservative. But we can use that same strategy of fear that people are having about Jill Stein to our advantage. So talk to these conservatives that care about your rights, Callie. They care about these ideas, and say, I don't want to support Trump because of this, and push them to either abstain on that ballot section of the ballot or to vote third party, and you now are pulling away Republican votes, and you're sort of counteracting your 5% margin. Because honestly, no one expects Jill Stein to win this election. No one expects Gary Johnson to win this election. What they expect or are trying to do is win that 5%, which I happen to think was 10%, but if it's 5%, that's even better. Let's go 5%. That's a much more obtainable goal. So we can think of those two things that the Democrats didn't have my vote. When Clinton announced she was running, I didn't say, all right, let's go Clinton. And then when Bernie came in, I jumped ship. I was not going to vote Democrat at all, no matter who they put forward. And then suddenly it was Bernie, whose career I had personally been following for a long time as an avowed socialist. I was very excited to see someone more in line with my views actually have a chance. And so I put Jill on hold to move over to Bernie and followed his campaign and pushed it forward. And for the most of that time, thinking there was no chance. And then suddenly he exploded and we had this chance. And then to realize today that he's lost because, not just because of the DNC, but they had a major role in trying to stop him, that just makes me feel a little bit more adamant about pushing green, getting that 5%, and literally destroying this two-party system. But yeah, I think Jabari is completely right. The smart state system, because at the end of the day, we can't let Trump be our president. We can't do that. I can't do that to you. I can't do that to Latinos. I can't do that to African Americans. And we have to come up with a strategic plan to make sure Trump does not win. But we can't just pour our hearts and souls into Clinton and not work on these third-party ideas.
Yeah, I hear that, and that actually makes a lot of sense because I was actually like really, really bummed. I'm like, damn it, like I'm gonna have to vote for Hillary. I don't want to vote for Hillary.
Don't make me do it.
Like I was by far not excited about it. So let's propose this.
Well, if I can interject really quick, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
What are the chances of Clinton winning your state?
Well, I'm in Ohio, so that's like the swing state.
You're a swing state, so you're that is true. Okay, so the bad person asked that question because
Boom.
I do want and like we talked about smart states is these blood red states. A lot of times, if they think they need to try to vote Clinton to push her over the edge, but Clinton's not going to win Texas. Clinton's not going to win Louisiana. So why give her a single vote in those states, and let's pour them into what matters? But,
no, I hear that.
You're in Ohio, so you ruined my entire interjection. So go back to what you were talking about.
So, I mean, let's talk about swing states. How do they fit in to this strategy? I mean, are we suggesting like if you live in a swing state, maybe vote Democrat as a strategy supporting this, or how does that work in Jabari?
Well, I mean. Yes, I think vote Democrat to stop Trump, except unless you're, in the minority of people that have never voted Democrat. I mean, if you're far left, you've always voted Green, or you've always voted Libertarian. In that case, you're probably not going to vote Hillary anyway.
Right.
It doesn't
Nothing
seem
changes.
Like it's helping doesn't help the Republicans, but yes, I totally understand the specter of Trump, and I think that if you're in a swing state and you're liberal, go for Hillary.
Fair enough, Dan. Or is that still kind of? I know you had posted something on your blog a couple of days ago, or maybe it was last week. That was kind of that kind of seemed to be where you were at. Is that still where you're at, or are you? Because I know at the beginning of the show, it seemed like you were just like F Hillary, totally done with her, no matter what. Like, is that still kind of where you're at?
It's still sort of where I'm at, and I feel torn about that though, because I am at that point where. And I said in my article, and I've said in many previous ones, that I will never tell somebody how to vote. So I won't tell somebody, look, you live in a swing state, you need to vote Democrat because you're a liberal. I think they do have to make that their choice because they have to go to sleep at night. And if they can go to sleep at night voting for Clinton and then in 2 years read a story that 84 civilians were bombed in Syria accidentally.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's a tough pill to swallow. But at the same time, can they go to sleep at night knowing that maybe, same-sex marriage is off the table now, it's gone? Because another lawsuit and then a Trump Supreme Court nominee is the swing that undoes it all and sends us back, So they have to weigh those options themselves. But at that same time, I can't compare my fears of Trump to someone of any minority group in this country. I have it pretty easy as a white cis male. Like, I couldn't check off more boxes that give me privilege in this country. I think if there is a box, I've checked it. But I do have my own thing. As a freelance writer, I Obamacare and Medi-Cal are big things I rely on to make my life work and to keep my kids healthy. Trump's would destroy those in a heartbeat.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and then suddenly, how do I pay for that? How do I take care of my family under a Trump presidency?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday who was diagnosed with leukemia about a year ago, and she's like, you know what? Like, I'm kind of a conservative leaning person, but like, I would be dead if it weren't for Obamacare. Like, wow. Obamacare is the reason that she was able to get treatment for her leukemia, and she's now in remission. I mean, that's powerful.
It's powerful, and I hate Obamacare. I think Obamacare is terrible.
Well, right. There's so much wrong with it.
Right. But everything we've had before has been so bad that this actually looks good in comparison.
Well, right.
It speaks fun. And that's another, that's a whole other issue about Clinton, is saying, like, let's keep going at this. Like, no, let's not keep going at this. Let's destroy this and put something way better in place. I know we worked hard for it, but it kind of sucks still. Let's just
do something going up better. Next year.
Yeah, 17% in California.
Ugh.
How is that affordable healthcare, honestly? But we're going to get way off topic if we start debating healthcare.
I've struggled with confidence throughout my life, and I've struggled with shame and internalized transphobia and internalized racism and internalized classism. And so I have all that stuff, but there was something in me believed I had something special. Telling the truth to myself about myself is awesome, because it's just a relief, because I don't have to try to be something I'm not. I can just be. Who you are authentically is all right. The shame is what kills you. Believing that you are unworthy of love and belonging, that who you are authentically is a sin or is wrong, is deadly. Who you are is beautiful and amazing. It's important, with all of the messages that might tell you otherwise, that you have that in yourself to say that I am beautiful, I'm smart, and I'm amazing.
Before we jump back into the show, it's time to thank our patrons. Big shout out this week to Willard, Willow, and Joanna. Thank you so much for collaborating in our continuing mission to smuggle penises into women's restrooms and force everyone into their very own gay marriage. Patrons of the show get access to new episodes before anyone else, a shout out on the show, and exclusive Google Hangouts. To make a donation as little as $1 per episode, head over to patreon.com/thegaytheist manifesto. Thank you. So here's a question, because I think one of the things that people are kind of thinking long term about is, say, the Democratic Party sees the writing on the wall, right? And they see that people are kind of leaving the party, voting green, even voting libertarian, which is like, if you call yourself progressive, I don't know how you do that, but some people do. And they see the writing on the wall and they're like, you know what? We've got to shift left. If they turn around and say in 2020, say, let's just say hypothetically, the smart state strategy thing works, right? The Greens get 5% and all of a sudden are a real player. the DNC sees the writing on the wall and they put a Bernie Sanders up in 2020 for some, assuming, Donald Trump gets elected, if, Hillary's out of the picture. It's just a thought experiment. Is there a thing that they can do to win you?
Yeah, I mean, just by adopting the platforms of the left. I mean, this is something that historically happens, is that, when a third party starts to grow too big, the Democrats or the Republicans adopt their policies and eat them. It's what happened with the populists in the 1890s. It happened with the Socialist Party. It happened with the Progressive Party. Like multiple parties in the past century and a half have started to grow a little too big, and then the Democrats and the Republicans take their policies to eat them and take back the voters. So it's actually a viable thing to say that, if we get the Green Party to grow too large, we can get the Democratic Party to, go against drone strikes, adopt looking for 100% renewables by 2030, looking for more peaceful solutions, many things that are much more progressive that are in the Green Party platform.
Well, and what I was kind of getting at there is, if we're talking about, we understand how problematic the two-party system is, if that sort of shift happens and we say, you know what, they've adopted all the policies that we like, let's go back there, are we reinforcing that when our goal may be to get rid of the two-party system? Is that a concern, or is it more just like, if they're doing the stuff that we agree with, let's give them our vote?
Well, that depends on our voting system. I mean, our two-party system is just directly tied to our voting system. It's first past the post, and it's an archaic system which we refuse to get rid of. But because of the way it's set up, it encourages two large big tent parties to form that continually, to take half the populace and compete against each other. If we switch to instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting, as it's known in many European countries, that enables a multi-party system. So, I mean, if we're talking in your hypothetical about 2020. If we've moved on to, the more modern way of voting, and there are initiatives in many states to do that. If we've moved on to that, I would definitely keep on pushing for the Greens and a multi-party system. If we still have yet to do it, then it's a situation where I would concede and say, okay, the Democrats are much more progressive now. They're much more liberal. They've taken these much further left positions, and yes, I can give them back my vote.
Fair enough. Dan, what do you think?
I agree with some of that. I think part of it, though, is we need to, if we can make a viable party by 2020, and then Democrats notice that and pick up on that. I think to a degree we can probably give the presidency our vote, but we need to use that leverage to in Congress. The Senate and the House needs to be suddenly injected with Greens and other third parties, because we're not ever going to reform this voting system that we have if we keep Democrats and Republicans in charge. Because
right.
what reasoning do they have to change it if they keep staying in charge? No Democrat is going to vote to make it easier for a Green to take their job. But if a Green's in there next to a Democrat, and then another Green comes in, and then another Green, they might be more likely to say, look, we can vote to make it easier for us to get in here, and we can work towards that so that we do have a runoff type election system, or something that does encourage third parties to grow. So I think we could look at it as the sense that, maybe in 2020 we're not going to be ready to suddenly elect a Green president, and if let's say it's Clinton that wins and she does really well, we might not have a really viable chance of upending her with a Green. But if she has been forced to adapt a more leftist policy, fantastic. But then we can work even harder on the smaller campaigns, because we don't have to worry so much about that quote unquote 5%, and we can get these people installed, and then we can start working on actual voter reform that sets us up for future presidential elections that aren't just based on two-party. So I wouldn't say I would go running to the Democrats. It would probably take 15, 20 years for me to say that maybe in that many years the Democrats are just as good as the Greens, and I will pick between which candidate they've chosen.
Right.
And it won't be so much about policy as much as it would be about, this person wants to do this to move us forward, this person wants to do this, I'm going to go this way or that way, which I think would be so much better for the country if we weren't all trying to be pigeonholed into these two parties that only represent a minuscule part of the wealthiest people in this country.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, the reason that I was so frustrated, and honestly, I don't know that I am anymore, if Just after, having this discussion and hearing these points of view, because the way that it seemed to me, and maybe this is just because I tend to run in sort of, far left liberal circles, is the whole, Bernie or bust mentality. And the idea that, Bernie doesn't win, so burn it down. Bernie didn't get the nod, so I'm going to vote for Trump, that kind of stuff. And it seems to me that these people just don't understand how politics works.
I think that's slightly unfair. I think that's a lot of media perception on what Bernie or bust means.
Okay.
And maybe bad naming as well. Because what happened was you had Bernie or bust really morph as the movement changed. Because again, they tried to mimic the whole Occupy, we don't have a leader movement. And so it was sort of leaderless in that sense. So someone could just hashtag like Bernie or bust, burn it down. And suddenly people were like, they just want to burn it down. And then you'd have a whole bunch say, no, we want to do this, but no one would notice. So you got a bunch of people saying, Bernie or bust now is saying, look, in states that are swing states, they're sort of putting it up in the air. And states that aren't, they're actually starting to fall behind Stein. And even an evolution from that was the hashtag movement for Bernie, which was started in Seattle's socialist alternative candidate, Salon. I can't think of. Thank you. She came up with movement for Bernie, which was either right in swing states, you're going to have to make that decision to vote Clinton or not. And she seemed to be leaning more towards we're going to have to vote Clinton to keep Trump out. But in non-swing states, if you're leaning green, go green. And if you're leaning Bernie, write him in. Because both are serving some sort of purpose. The write-in of Bernie is a protest because it's not counted. But the Jill Stein vote is a movement towards that 5%. And so you are going to have people, and it happens every time, and in every election, that want to just burn it all down. They don't care. Regardless of who's running, they want it all to fall apart and crumble, and they have this fantasy of some 1917 Russian Revolution that is not going to happen here. But I think what's happened is the Bernie or bust has been kind of painted as that, let's burn it down, let Trump win. And I someone who's been really involved with those movements and talked to these people and really followed it and written about it a lot, that's not the sense I've ever got from them, is that they don't understand politics. It's that they're sort of where I'm sitting, and they're completely fed up, and they're trying to navigate a world of a two-party system and trying to figure out what's next to really spark actual meaningful change. And they feel like they are living in a country that doesn't want it. And some are very young and slightly naive to just how politics sort of work, as far like, watching elections and watching polls swing back and forth. So they get frustrated and happy, and their moods kind of swing with the latest NBC poll. But I think as a whole, they're coming together and trying to figure out what they can do to move the country forward. And many of them realize that in certain places that a Clinton vote is the only way to do that. And in other places, they have a little bit more freedom, and they need to navigate how to use that energy and excitement over Bernie to make actual change in this country.
Well, right. That's kind of where I was going, because when I saw, and like I said, I had no way to determine if this is just a handful of people on my Facebook profile or if it's enough people to make a difference. And I definitely wanted to couch it in that. So I don't know if this is a large movement of people or anything like that, but it frustrated me so much because I'm thinking and a lot of these people were people who I'd not seen really talk much about politics before. So it just seemed like, okay, I care about politics all of a sudden, which is awesome. It's cool to care about politics because politics affects literally how all of us live. So cool, let's be excited about politics. But then it's I'm really excited about politics for a year and a half. I lost, so F everyone, and it's well, why can't we do the least harm now and then regroup and build this movement? Let's do what we can to get Hillary elected, and then hand the Democrats a crushing defeat by electing Greens and independents in Congress in 2 years. So the DNC is whoa, wait a minute. Because I feel if everyone says you know what, let's vocally support the Green Party, let's vocally support independents and socialists, and but like in the secrecy of the voting booth, we're still going to vote Democrat. Like, obviously they're going to see the numbers and they're going to know that's what happened, right? We're not going to fool anybody doing that. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking. And that makes a lot of sense, you know, because like I said, this is just stuff that I've seen, just, you know, people talking in groups and on Facebook. So I had no way to know if it was an actual phenomenon or anything like that.
And there is a certain degree of people that are thinking like, oh, we can still make change if we write Bernie in. And that is just a misunderstanding of how write-ins work in this country.
Well,
write-ins aren't counted unless you've been approved by that state for your name to be counted as a write-in. A lot of people just don't realize that, and I think that is a small movement. But I have talked to some people, and a very few, but you know, where I've said like, yeah, here's what I'm doing. Like, no, I'm going to write in Bernie because I think if we all write him in, he can win. And I'm like, do you realize that if we all wrote in Bernie, and he literally got the biggest number in California, but he wasn't approved for write-ins in California, he gets 0 votes in California.
Right.
And it doesn't make sense. And people can't wrap their head around that because how is that democracy?
Well,
and that's reasoning because
yeah.
people are going to write in lots. I mean, in the primaries, there was a couple positions open in California that I was like, I don't know who these people are, and I didn't really like them, and I wrote myself in. And I wrote myself in knowing I wasn't going to win, but I wasn't about to give these people my vote.
Right, that's fair.
But it wasn't counted. It was kind of more of a I'm going to take a picture of this for Instagram. This is funny kind of thing. Knowing either of these two people win aren't going to change anything for me. But, you know, they were very minuscule, nothing positions. But people think, you know, that's how democracy should work. You write in who you want to win, and if they get the votes, they do. And they don't. So there is, you know, you're not completely unfair to say there are some people out there who this might be their first election or the first election they've actually really cared about. Where maybe their first election was Obama in 2012, and, you know, the Obama hype was kind of gone by then, and it was just Obama versus Romney, and he just trumped them. You know, we kind of saw how that rolled out. But, yeah, so there's some naive voters out there. But like you said, you know, you weren't sure how big they were. My gauge from just kind of being out there a bit is they're the most minuscule of number. They're probably as minuscule as the people that say they voted for Bernie in the primaries and then now want to vote for Trump because they want to burn it all down.
Right, fair.
You know, you're probably talking in the single-digit percentile there.
Hi, this is Trav Mamone of the By Any Means podcast. The By Any Means podcast is a weekly show where I interview guests about the intersections of social justice and humanism. Just go to www.byanymeans.com, that's by spelled B-I, to hear the podcast and read the blog. Because, hey, aren't we all a little bi-curious?
What's something I could do with a very sexy lady friend of mine that people would find provocative, interesting, and entertaining enough to tune in week after week? Oh, I know! A podcast! If you'd like to hear me and Kate be provocative and thought-provoking week after week, join us on the Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast. We'd love for you to be part of our audiological three-way.
The staff of Secular Coalition for America lobbies U.S. Congress on issues of separation of church and state, and they've become a powerhouse for change in the United States government. You'll definitely want to subscribe to receive their email action alerts. These are updates for important issues and ones that you can get involved with directly. And hopefully, you'll consider making a contribution to the Secular Coalition for America to help them continue fighting for your equality. You can do it all at secular.org.
Okay, so we got a couple of minutes left here, and one thing, Dan, I know you've got a big soapbox on this, so I'm going to give Jabari the chance to respond first. I want to talk about some of the misconceptions surrounding the Green Party because
great.
because there's definitely a narrative of, you know, anti-vaccine, anti-GMO, very woo kind of thing, and Dan, you've definitely taught me that there's a lot more to it than that. And like I said, I know Dan, you could probably go for hours, so I'm going to give Jabari the chance to respond first. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, biggest misconception I want to put out there is the narrative being peddled by Dan Savage now that the Green Party is full of pasty white supporters. I know Dan referred himself as a cis white male earlier, so I'm just going to point out that I am black, I am gay, and I'm non-Christian. I'm Buddhist, so I'm going to put those out there as like I'm in many marginalized groups, and I'm still a Green Party supporter. In terms of some of the anti-science stuff that's being peddled, yeah, I think some members of the Green Party are anti-vax. I know some members of the Republican and Democrat parties are anti-vax as well.
Right.
In terms of Jill Stein, she's been peddled as anti-vax. What she's actually against is just the FDA being controlled by lobbyists, which is a totally reasonable stance to take. She just doesn't think the FDA, which approves vaccines, should be controlled by lobbyists. And that, I mean, when you look at the numbers, you can see the prices of vaccines skyrocketing in the previous several years. So I like that stance. Homeopathy, I think, was in the platform for a while. It actually got removed. The Green Party has a very democratic process of rewriting its platform, and homeopathy was removed from the platform in May, I believe. I think those are the two main ones. Oh, nuclear power. That's actually a thing where I disagree with the Green Party on, with in terms of just shifting completely away from nuclear power as soon as possible in search of renewables. I mean, I do enjoy the call for 100% renewables by 2030. I think third generation nuclear plants are fairly safe, and I'm fine with using those until we can scale up to 100% wind and solar and tidal, geothermal, all that. And let me see. I think those are the main ones I know of. So, Dan, you can take it from here.
Yeah, Dan, I want to hear about GMOs.
All right, so they are just completely wrong on GMOs. That's the most simple way to put it. For the Greens, that's just a position where they're just flat out wrong. And I'll get right back on topic when I kind of divert here. But like I've said 1,000 times in many comments and many conversations, I would rather debate GMOs with a politician than sending troops into battle.
Yes.
And so for me, it's not a non-issue. It is a big issue because I think GMOs have a really major place in our society, and I think they can really help worldwide. And I think they're a great advancement in science. So I don't want to take away from that and make it sound like it's not important. It really is. It's not like this, wayside issue. But I find that, troops in battle, immigration, things like that have a much more direct impact on people's everyday lives, that I would rather have a candidate who's on my side there and then sit them down and go, let's talk GMOs. Given that, I think, Stein's whole ban GMOs until we have further research, complete garbage. That's probably the biggest issue I have where I disagree with her. Is that
right? And obviously, we're never going to find 100% agreement, and let's exactly. we definitely want to lay that out. For me,
and you know what, Jabari? Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. You know what Jabari said about vaccines is I think Jill Stein is right that people fear the FDA and lobbyist involvement, and I agree lobbyists should be out of the FDA. But what she was really saying, and what people took as like his anti-vax stance, was that the reason a lot of people are anti-vax is because they don't trust the people in charge, because they see lots of money there. And if we took out the for-profit healthcare system, there wouldn't be lots of money there. So when scientists are putting out research that say, look, vaccines are safe, people that aren't as scientifically literate as you and I, they will then look at it and say, oh, well, there's no profit incentive for them to fudge these reports or make it sound like they're better when they're not. You remove that fear, and you suddenly have people that become more open to the ideas of vaccines. So she was really talking about how we take people's fear away, because as a medical doctor, as she said, vaccines have done wonders. And She even hinted at supporting mandatory vaccines because she said, she's not aware of mandatory vaccine policies that don't exempt health risk, because there are people that can't be vaccinated.
Right.
And people always worry that a mandatory vaccine means these people are going to be vaccinated and then have a health risk. But that's never going to happen. If a doctor thinks someone can't be vaccinated, they're not going to be vaccinated.
Right.
And that's what herd immunity is all about. That's why we all get vaccinated, to protect these people. And she, to me, has always seemed to be on that side. And so when people try to claim she's anti-vaccine, no. I think she's right about how people feel about the FDA. I personally do trust them, regardless of the fact that there's money involved. I think the money involved just brings the prices up. I never felt unsafe getting a vaccine because the FDA or money has been involved, because there are real medical doctors and scientists working behind these things.
Well, right, and I think the numbers are there too.
Exactly. And then, when it comes to homeopathy, I actually think the strange part is that people didn't quite grasp from what Jill said about them, was that she wants them to be available to everybody, but the part they missed was that she wants them to be, and the same as vaccines, medically and scientifically tested and verified that they work, so that they become part of the healthcare system that people can choose. That statement alone means that the homeopathy that we know is gone.
Right.
Because once they have to submit themselves to testing, they fall apart. And if someone brings forth something and it's tested and it works, well, guess what? It suddenly doesn't become alternative medicine homeopathy. It becomes medicine. So I think her platform really is, we need to be open to these other ideas, but they need to be tested. And I think all that really is pandering language.
Sure.
And I think, Jill Stein, as much as we like to talk about her as this like revolutionary, this and that, where she is with her ideas, when you listen to her talk, she's a politician. She's a good politician. She says things very well, but she knows how to play to her audience. And the Greens have a big divide. The older Greens tend to be more on the, I'm really anti-GMO, I'm really anti-vaccine, all these, homeopathy, follow the money, cancer research is just being squandered so that we keep cancer. Those people are the old Greens. When I jump into a Green Facebook page and it's young people, and I post a link to something like, 3 things the Greens need to get rid of for full leftist support, I get overwhelming replies of, thank you for finally saying this. No one's listening.
Nice.
Because the younger Greens are more scientifically literate. They're less afraid of this big spooky guy behind the curtain, and they're more open to looking at overall evidence. And I think what you're going to see is a progression of the Greens as younger people take charge and as younger people move up, that this whole, their anti-science thing goes away. Because you have this very pro-science party. Look at the environment, and they use all the scientific research to back up the environment.
Right.
How does it make sense to say that and then say, yeah, but this vaccine research is funded by so-and-so, it's garbage? It doesn't make sense. But that's because you have a mix of age demographics that are looking at things slightly differently, where I think a lot of the older folks that are environmentally friendly aren't more or less climate change environmentally friendly. They're from the 60s, the 50s, 60s, and 70s era of environmentally friendly, where it was more of like a, I'm going to use the word hippie derogatorily here, but they're hippies towards the earth. They see it differently than we do. So our passion to fix the earth is driven by science.
Right.
If they told us that pumping black smoke into the sky wasn't hurting a thing or a person, and the scientific evidence was there for it, and it was just cosmetic, but it was actually producing something for the betterment of society, as younger scientifically literate people, we'd accept that. But I think this older crowd would still reject it because they have a different idea of what it means to take care of the earth.
Right on.
So I think what you have is this 2 different positions that are just moving in one direction. And so I think that's becomes the big misconception about Greens, is that the older people are still probably the loudest because they've been there the longest.
Right.
So that's who you go to. When you make a media phone call, you go to the person that's in charge of that local state, and they've probably been there the longest because these younger people haven't completely taken over yet. And so I think we do have two slightly varying positions, and it's why I'm actually not technically agreeing on paper, because I can't quite commit to where they are yet, but I'm willing to get behind them on a lot of things and push for green candidates when I think it's right. But I'll look at the socialists and others when I think they're right. And I would love for the Greens to absorb that all. I think they could.
Awesome.
I really think the Greens could be the leftist party, that the Socialist Alternative, the Socialist Party USA, Socialist Worker, they could all come together and say, let's get behind the Greens. And that just takes the younger crowd to push so that, like Jabari said, it's democratic. They change their platform constantly when people vote and demand change. They're willing to do it. And that just takes us to get in there, to get involved, and then to change it. And so the more of us that get involved in the Green Party, the more of us that make our voices heard and demand that we are counted and listened to, we can completely revolutionize politics with the Green Party.
Awesome.
That brings up another topic that I wanted to get into, which is I feel like there's a bigger issue behind all of this. So let's say that the Green Party does get enough votes to get that 5% and they're able to be on the ballot in all the states. I still feel like there wouldn't be much of a chance of them actually being able to make any changes, just because I think the reason why the Democratic and Republican parties are so powerful is not just because they have so much popular support, which they do, but also because of the corporate influence, which is a huge problem, that corporations are able to donate almost unlimited sums of money to these two parties. And in that way, they influence what sorts of votes these people give, in Congress and even up to the presidential level, possibly. So I feel like even if the Green Party does make it onto the ballots, the Republicans and Democrats have so much money at their disposal that they would just be able to crush them, because, unfortunately, a lot of people are influenced really heavily by, advertising and by, the smear campaigns and everything. And when they have the sort of money that they do, they're able to do that more effectively. And the issue isn't necessarily who is in power, because once they get into power, they're so easily corrupted, and they're not voting based on the people's interests. They're voting based on the corporate interests. So I think the bigger thing that we need to worry about, rather than who's in charge, would be to get money out of politics. But at the same time, there's the Republicans and Democrats are both corrupt, but I think the Republicans are a lot more corrupt. So that is why I would prefer to have, a Democrat in power. If you got to choose between the party that's like 98% corrupt and the party that's 90% corrupt, I'm going to pick the 90% corrupt one.
And you're right, but I think, and I want to make sure I give Jabari a chance, because I just went on a long rant. But I
learned a lot.
I think what we have is you have the idea that we talked about earlier, which is kind of taking over Congress, and that's strategic. So you get the 5%, you get some national recognition, you get a bunch of money into your party, and then you start looking at the cities and states that don't have a massive Republican or Democrat stronghold, where they kind of maybe flip-flop in between depending on who's running, or, and they're not a lot of money is being pushed into that area, and that's where you run really strong Greens. Because what will happen is if you could put enough Greens in power that were elected without that big money, they're more likely to vote for election reform that doesn't involve big money. If you elect somebody that was elected with big money, you have a hard. So let's say we went to New York and said, let's get a Green here, and even though it's been a Democratic stronghold forever, you're gonna have to dump lots of money into that, and you're gonna have to go out to corporate donors and get money put to that person, and then they're gonna owe people, and then you have a corrupted politician pretty quickly. Yep. And that's not everybody. Some people just aren't corruptible. Dennis Kucinich, and even Bernie Sanders, for the most part, they were never really they weren't easy to buy politicians. But they were, they ran Democrats or independents. But so, you could potentially run somebody in New York with lots of money, win, and then still have them vote that way. But it's less likely, or it's more dangerous, I should say. But if we start electing people in these small areas, states that maybe can elect a lot of people so we can bring in a few more senators at a time, and you're putting in some Greens here and there, they're coming in there with favors not owed. They're not as buyable. And then you have this whole Green backing behind them with their eyes watching. And I think, from my experience, Greens will turn on somebody very fast if they abandon that Green ideology. So these people want to stay in their position. They're going to have to vote with that position in mind. And I think what will happen is you can put in enough Greens throughout time to then start to say, let's vote on election reform, and then start reform election to pull money out of politics. Once we pull money out of politics, all bets are off.
Yeah.
And Jabari, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, two things. Just in terms of the money, right? I mean, 2016, you're the populist. Bernie Sanders kind of proved you don't need corporate cash to raise hundreds of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump plowed ahead of 16 other Republican candidates while barely taking, a dime beyond his own money. And even now, going into the general against Hillary, he's neck and neck with her in the swing states, and she's spending tens of millions more than him just to stay afloat. So why I bring that up is to bring up the importance of having a strong message. And I think the Green Party has a really great platform. And I just, every time I show it to somebody, they say they fully agree with it. Just the only thing holding them back is thinking the Green Party can't win or, something along those lines. So what's great about this election and getting Jill's visibility up is that you get a positive feedback loop where more people know about the platform, more people know about what the Green Party believes in, thereby making it easier for lower ticket Greens to get visibility as well and strengthen their campaigns.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, and I think that's part of the reason why Bernie was so popular, and ironically also some of the reason why Trump is popular is because people are becoming more aware of corporate influence in politics, and these are the two, outsider candidates that weren't influenced by that as strongly. So I think that it is possible to get people on the side of the Green Party just based on that, because the Green Party is anti-corporatist as well. I think it would just take a long time to get enough people into positions of power to be able to do something about that. And I just worry about the people that already have the money just being, just crushing them totally because of the money that they already have.
Yeah, that's what's been happening in the past 30 years with the Green Party. So we'll hopefully, with the visibility of Jill Stein's campaign this year and actually getting above 5%, we can turn that narrative around.
And at the same time, too, yeah. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting people.
No, let's go.
We have this, like we talked about too, and Jabari really brought this up, is that the more Greens we get elected on the left, the Democrats are going to have to start swinging left as well. So at the same time, while we're electing Greens to do this, Democrats are going to start being elected that may have to do this as well. So they're going to get on that page of getting money out of politics because they're going to have to shift left if they want to be the liberal party. So if the Greens are being further left, the Democrats are going to try to move to them to be more. So suddenly you have two parties electing further left candidates who might be a bit more receptive to election reform and getting money out of politics. Because I think at the end of the day, both Greens and Democrats realize money in politics mostly benefits Republicans. Because the richest of the rich want to protect every dime they have. And the one party that protects them the most, not saying Democrats don't, because they do, but are Republicans. And, that's why the Koch brothers are Republican. That's why these big, giant conglomerates put money into Republican candidates so much. So I think Democrats do have a reason to get money out of politics, but maybe it's the Greens that can scare them enough to make them kind of flood over. And so I think it's maybe like a twofold strategy, really. You elect Greens that are going to vote, but at the same time, those elected Greens replacing Democrats are scaring the Democrats so that they come and kind of meet the Greens a lot more. And Democrats love to talk about reaching across the aisle. Well, maybe for the first time ever, they can reach across the aisle to some actual leftists.
Awesome. Well, guys, this has been a fantastic conversation. I am feeling a whole lot better about this entire thing after hearing this, because this is a lot of new stuff to me. I tend to I care very much about politics, and I do talk about politics, but I tend to be like, I work on changing people's hearts and minds, because that's kind of what my wheelhouse is, and people vote with their hearts and minds, so that's kind of the difference that I make. But some of the nuts and bolts of this stuff is very new to me, and it's been fantastic hearing from both of you and getting your perspectives. So I sincerely appreciate it. And
I think at the end of the day, we can all be friends and unite in the fact that we all hate Donald Trump.
Right, yeah. I think, we're all there. So, Jabari, before we go, is there anything that you want to plug, any projects you're involved with, anything like that you want to tell folks about, and tell us where we can find more about you?
I don't actually, but but I do encourage everyone to check out Jill Stein's platform in the Green Party.
Awesome, sounds good. Dan, let's hear it. I know you got a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, we got another hour. First and foremost, check out my blog, Danthropology, on the Pathos Network. Danthropology.net is the quick address to there. So just think anthropology with a D in front of it. Clever. Go ahead and head there. That's my blog. You can read about everything. DanArel.com as well if you just want something really simple. Follow me on Twitter at Dan Arel, DANAREL, and look for my upcoming book on October 1st. My second book, it's called The Secular Activist, with a foreword written by American atheist president David Silverman, and it is about how to be a secular activist.
Yes, I'm about a third of the way through it, and I'm really excited. We're going to have you back on the show later to talk about it for sure.
Perfect. I can't wait.
Wait, you said it was coming out in October. How has Callie read it?
Do you know who I am?
So I'd like to talk to you, Ari, about how books are written. They're written beforehand.
I didn't know Callie was special enough to get an advanced copy.
Yes,
that's what I get for having a famous friend.
Yes, I have granted Callie a copy of the book because I am hoping that she wants to blurb it and give me some praise that I can use to sell some more. So hopefully you like it so far. But yeah,
joke's on you 1st. If it sucks.
Well, no, because I'll have a whole second book about activists that we should disregard. But yeah, so that's on October 1st. It's on pre-sale now, or you can wait till it comes out. It'll be print, ebook, audiobook, you name it. It'll be out there on Pitchstone Publishing, available worldwide.
Awesome. Well, thank you both again. This has been awesome.
Thanks for having us.
That, my friends,
thank you very much.
That, my friends, is going to do it for this episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto on Secular Media Network. Definitely want to thank Jabari and Dan again for their time, for their perspective, for the information, because good God, I desperately needed it. You can find the show on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto. You can email us at thegaytheistmanifesto@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at GaytheistCallie. You can find the show on Twitter at The Gaytheist. And
what I did on my summer vacation. I did a lot of fun things on my summer vacation. I went to the beach with my mom and my dad and my little brother. It was really fun. We swam in the ocean and made sand castles. We saw some hermit crabs, but my brother got stinged by a jellyfish and he cried. We ate some seafood and I tried fried alligator. It tasted like chicken. I had a lot of fun at the beach and I hope we go back next summer. I also did a lot of fun things at home. I went swimming at the pool and I rode bikes with my friends. One time we had a slumber party and we put tents in my backyard and we pretended we were camping. We also had a barbecue and ate watermelon and popsicles. Those were yummy. On the 4th of July, we did fireworks at our house and that was so much fun. It made a lot of loud noises, but I liked seeing the fireworks. My favorite firework is the one that looks like a UFO. This summer, I also got a pen pal. Their name is Ari Stillman, and we write to each other on Facebook and sometimes on email at aristillman4@gmail.com. I've never had a non-binary friend before, so I am happy that Ari is my friend now. They teach me lots of cool things, like how to advocate for marginalized communities and how to please a woman. I am very glad that I met Ari. I wish everyone could have a pen pal. And that is what I did on my summer vacation. The end.
If you want
Smalley sigh.
if you want to support the show and support the activism we do, you can head to patreon.com/thegaytheist manifesto and make a per episode donation as little as $1 per episode. And if that doesn't work, you can also head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. That helps us get heard by lots more people. Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.
Bye-bye.